Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. JACALYN. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. JACALYN at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV, and hello to our friends listening on Business Talk Radio. Maybe it's happy Friday for you or happy Saturday for you. We are going to explore all kinds of ways to lose the stress and lose the worry here on the Listening Mentor Show. What is a listening mentor, you might ask? That would be me. I'm the listening mentor. I teach people how to listen at an elevated level, to listen without judgment, without providing solutions, without interrupting someone, and without trying to one-up someone's story with your own story that you think is so cool and so much better. Joining me every Friday is the Harley Street stress expert, Caroline HEWARD. She is going to share with us what is Harley Street and what exactly does she do, and how does that integrate with effective listening. Welcome to the show, Caroline.
Hello, good to be here again.
Yes, I look forward to seeing you every Friday. This is a great way to help wind down the week. And as you know, the weekend is coming, or some people are already into the weekend, and it's a time to regroup and lose the stress. But in some cases, people are even more stressed out because now they're with their family, or they're by themselves, or they're in a dysfunctional relationship. So we're going to talk about all of that. But before we do, I'm going to spotlight you. And for our friends joining for the very first time, what is Harley Street and what do you do as a Harley Street stress expert?
Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. My name is Caroline HEWARD, and I'm known as the Harley Street stress expert. Why Harley Street? Well, in London and in Europe, it's known as the famous street where all good therapists and doctors reside. You have to pass your credentials through their medical board, which means that you're deemed to be as good as you say you are, because you have to have a license to practice there. So it's a good address to have and to be working from. Why expert? Well, I've been doing this work for 22 years. So I would say that after that length of time, it deems me an expert. And what do I do? Well, I actually help you in any matter of what causes you stress, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, behavioral, whether it's relationship-wise, whether it's intimacy, whether it's friendships, whether it's family, whatever is causing you your stress, whatever keeps you awake at night. And essentially, I look for root cause. I find the root cause and allow you to process and integrate what hasn't been processed. So it literally leaves you. It will leave you with an incredible night's sleep as well. Why elevated listening? Sorry, I forgot the last question. Why is that so important? Well, it's important because the first place we start listening to is ourselves. We have to hear what's going on for ourselves first, and then we can hear what's going on for other people. And if we're not listening to ourselves, then we have all manner of stress that we kind of push down and don't handle and kind of carry on. You know, sort of we kind of keep calm and carry on, but we're not calm because our body, our physiology, our relationships, it's whatever we're complaining about causes, tells us. It's like our unspoken talking that the body is talking and it's showing up in our lives. And essentially, when we listen to ourselves, we can solve all manner of things. And that makes us incredible listeners for other people too.
Which is so important. And when we look at eliminating stress and fear and self-doubt, I truly believe that we have to start by going within and creating inner peace. And when we're at peace, we're not as reactive or as emotional when someone else is out of control. We've all been there, right? Where you let yourself go out of control and later you're like, oh, I can't believe it. So when we start with ourselves, and it's a process, right? It takes practice. What are your thoughts about that, Caroline?
Our immediate human thing is to just react and respond, because our humanness makes us want to be right. Unless you've done some whacked out work like I've done, we want to be right because we don't like being wrong. And it's difficult when we feel that we're being made to feel wrong, even though we know that we're wrong. We don't like it. And so our immediate defense mechanism will respond from a place of our ego wanting to be right and playing the blame game. And so it is about almost biting your tongue and seeing what's in there for you. What is there that's causing you to respond and react? And almost take a breath. Literally, you've got a wonderful sponsorship advert that says take a moment. You really do need to take a moment, a breath, so that you're not instantly responding to win and for the other person to lose. What you're doing is you're looking at why the response, why the reaction, because your reaction is all yours. It's not the other person's. If the other person is angry or upset, that's theirs. But if you react in the same way, then that is yours to handle. So it is about taking some responsibility for how we're feeling, how we're interacting, and what's coming up for us. And then life becomes a bit more peaceful, because if we're not responding or interacting in a negative way, that negativity from the other person, and they have their own stuff going on, stays with them and it doesn't hurt you. So as soon as we're reacting and responding, we kind of get caught up in the drama of it all. But when we're not, when we take a moment, when we literally take a pause and take a breath, we don't get caught up, and then it doesn't hurt us or affect us.
Excellent points, Caroline. I have people reach out to me from all the different platforms at all times, day and night, because of all the different time zones. And someone sent me a message that I happened to read in the middle of the night, and there was kind of like a tone to it. And it's not someone that I know well, but I just kind of was like put off. And it was probably because it was the middle of the night also. So I started typing a response on my phone, and I said to myself, you know what, you don't want to send this, because you're just reacting. So I was able to hit the trash can. So then I started again, and I hit 3 times I hit the trash can. I said to myself, why don't you go back to sleep and see how you feel in a couple of hours? So I did, and I actually waited an entire day, and I read it again. And it was my interpretation of what the person wrote after I had some clarity. And I thought, I was so glad I didn't react and start a chain of events.
That's so true, because it depends where you are as to what you read. And if you're half asleep, and frequently I check my phone, when I'm half asleep, I've had a ping come through and I've checked my phone. And when I've looked at the message, it's kind of, get a life. And actually, when you read it in the cold light of day, when you're not asleep or, sort of otherwise, kind of not quite awake, you will see things differently. And the immediacy, we have such an immediacy these days of responding, kind of, and then hitting the key. We didn't used to be able to do that a long time ago, before computers. I remember that time. We didn't have that immediacy of that message, where we would be more thoughtful about what we wrote, and then we would consider it because we were writing it in a letter. Sort of the immediacy of technology means that we can literally just fire off, and then before we realize it, we have set up a challenging situation which wasn't supposed to be challenging. It's our interpretation, and it's always about our internal interpretation of what we read or what we think. It's like we have this mind dialogue that goes around in our head saying, well, they probably mean this. And we put these like sort of crazy meanings on something that didn't mean what we think it means, because that's what we do. And that's human. We all do it. I've refrained many times from not responding straight away. And if somebody has sent me a challenging message, text, email, sometimes I sit on it for a few days before I respond, because I don't want to. I do my very best not to react. But, you know, we are all human and we do sometimes. And if I'm not sure, I will generally stop and process what's come up for me in terms of what I read and what came up for me.
I agree with you. I think for me, I've really had to learn to dial it back with wanting to immediately respond, because I've been like that through most of my career. When I was in corporate, you know, you've got to get back to the client. The client's waiting for you, or your internal team. And I like to get back to someone within a few hours if possible. But now I've actually changed my perspective, and I want to respond to someone when I can truly focus. I feel like even though that's not listening because we're not having actual dialogue, but there is something to be said about reading something and being in the right mindset to respond to that.
I have had calls in the last few days because it's been quite a busy week and my sort of end of month has become busy. And some people have called me and I've not really had the time to do the call because I've got a client that's arriving imminently, and I've given the time and then I've said, I'm really sorry, I do have to go now, because if I don't, I'm not going to have finished preparing for my client coming to see me. And I almost feel apologetic that I have to do that. But, you know, sort of, I feel that it is that's going on in my world, in my background. But the person that I'm speaking to has no idea what's going on, and so it is important to almost be honest about what's happening in your world, because it might be that you've got something in the oven and if you don't rescue it, it might be burning, or it might be that you're due another consultation call and somebody's calling and you don't want to miss them or be late for them because they've made an appointment. And so people don't know what is happening in your space. They don't know what's happening. And so I feel it's important almost to tell them, to be honest, to share what is going on in your world, so that then there's a respectfulness of your timing and theirs.
Yes, I like what you just said. When someone makes an appointment, they have priority because they've
Yes.
set an agenda, they've set their time, as opposed to something else that just comes up. So, Caroline, when we look at setting ourselves up to live in a stress-free world, it almost sounds comical. How can I live in a stress-free world? But to your point, it's how we react, and we definitely have control over that. And I know you work with your clients to help them understand that. What are some tips that we can put in place right away to set ourselves up to be less reactive? We talked about not responding to certain things right away, or not trying to put our ideas of what someone means into whatever the communication is. What are some other things?
Well, I'd like to just expand on, you know, sort of our interpretation by saying that if we're not sure what the other person means, actually ask the question, can you clarify what you mean by this? Because if there's something that's kind of wound us up and we're feeling unhappy about what we've read, then I feel it's important to make sure that we have understood what we think we've understood by literally asking, can you please clarify what you mean by this? Because I'm not sure. So that then you're both on the same page. And the other thing to also do is to literally take some space for yourself, to almost like sort of take a drink, a glass of water, and just check in. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Because sometimes when we're stressed, we don't listen to our bodies. We don't kind of reach out for that glass of water, or we've missed lunch. And so then our stressors are higher when our sugar levels are low. And so it's important almost to kind of check in that I'm okay, am I okay? Because it might be that I'm not okay because I've missed lunch or I've skipped breakfast and it's now 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I've not eaten. And if that's the case, and a lot of people that are working in high level stress environments are in this situation where they haven't eaten, and so they will be making rash decisions. The other thing is, I had a client that I said, please refrain from drinking coffee before you come to see me because it's actually quite toxic to the body. And he said that he was literally shaking because he didn't have his cup of coffee. And it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I know that we tend to grab, sort of and reach for that cup of coffee. But coffee will actually give us almost a massive high, and then it plunges us into a massive trough as well. So be mindful of that and drink plenty of water. Take care of yourself. So that's kind of the drinking and the eating side of things. And the other thing I would suggest is doing something that makes you feel present to where you are, even if it's having a small conversation with somebody, a colleague or a member of family, but doing something that makes you present to the moment that you're in rather than being in your mind and in the exploration of what this, what that, what the other, and actually become present. Take a walk. It's sunny here. We've actually got spring finally arrived. Sort of take a breath of air, or take a breath in the body so that you begin to feel differently rather than being in a headspace. All these things, and there are many, many different things that you can do, but these things are quick to do and they're looking after you too.
I think it's so important, Caroline, that you brought up about food, because that's something that we might not think about. So you could eat something that is high in sugar content, and now your sugar levels are off and you're nervous and you're going to react differently than you would. And the same thing with caffeine. I know for myself, and I'm not bragging about it, but I haven't had caffeine in 3 years and 3 months. And I was addicted to, I don't know if you have it over there. It's called, I don't even know if they still make it. It's called Snapple.
I don't know because I've not been a coffee drinker for a couple of decades now, so I don't know.
I've never had a cup of coffee in my entire life. The only thing I would drink was diet iced tea. So I was really addicted to this. And I went to a doctor for my physical, and she said, do you drink caffeine? I said, well, I drink this. And she said, how much do you drink? And I told her this one bottle. And she said, oh no, that's 3 times the amount of caffeine. And you don't even realize it. So when I went off of it, which was really because of my ulcerative colitis, you shouldn't have caffeine. I didn't have any withdrawal symptoms. Nothing happened to me from it, which was amazing. But I know for some people, they've got to have that caffeine. They barely get out of the bed and they've got to have the caffeine, and sometimes really strong coffee. So that's depending on when you get them in the day. That's going to impact whether they've had a lot of caffeine, whether they're needing more caffeine, whether they've had sugar. So that there are a lot of good thoughts there.
We have an epidemic of coffee drinkers, and it will create havoc with your stressors and the way you respond. Absolutely. I mean, I've seen people drink huge, sort of from McDonald's, huge, cartons of coffee. And I've been quite surprised at how much coffee there is in there, because it's, when it is addictive, because it's the caffeine that's addictive. And two, it is toxic to your body. It is poisonous, and I think that we could look at all sorts of things and say everything's poisonous and everything's not good, and it's in moderation. I feel that we have to kind of look at some of these things and not say, no, that's really bad, you should never, but actually look at things in moderation. And if you are getting the shakes, if you've not had a cup of coffee for a couple of hours or 3 hours, then you need to look at that, because that is the signs of an addiction to the caffeine, which is obviously not good for anybody. And we will be responding from a different place, from a high level of cortisol, if we are in that space of the stressors.
I agree. And another suggestion that I have, because I had to learn this the hard way, was that when you're in a relationship or you're living with another person or persons, when you've been doing what you're doing all day and then the other person comes into the environment where you are, let's say you're working from home or you're at home, and then the other person comes into your environment, don't jump on the person right away. Oh, how was your day? Well, what's new? What's going on? I I used to do that actually, and I went for counseling, and I was told, give the person half an hour, because you don't know what happened on their return home, whether they were driving, they took public transportation, what their interaction, maybe they were on the phone. So give someone time to come down from whatever it is that they've been experienced in their work environment, and then they'll be much more receptive to having that conversation. What do you think about that?
That's a good point. Gosh, I wish I'd have been told that.
You didn't have to pay for it. I just gave it to you for free. How about that?
I would do the same. When I was married, I would always say, he would come in and there would be like I knew if he'd had a bad day because he would walk in like thunder, and I just knew that it was probably not a good time to speak to him. And then there were other times that he was kind of chatty and other times he was quiet. So you will get a feel for that. But I did used to want to make sure he was okay. So say, oh, is everything all right? Did you have a bad day? What happened? And I'd be like the inquiring one, to sort of make sure that he was okay again. Sort of that was not a good idea to do, because I wanted to make sure that he was, sort of going to have a good evening. But that's a really good strategy to almost let them, I call it let them land before you just let them get comfortable in the environment. One of my tips for myself to do that is to have a shower whenever I come back from work, or if I've been out. One of the things that I do, and it's a ritual I've done for many years, is literally take all clothes off and literally shower from head to foot. And what that does is it cleanses your entire day away, and you're then set for the evening. So I'm literally washing away the day and preparing in a refreshed way for the evening.
Yes, I think that's really critical. And I was also thinking about a scenario where someone is watching a television show, or they're in the middle of painting something. They're doing something that they're really engrossed in. And all of a sudden, you enter that space. And we talk about this, about listening, about asking for permission. But it's happened so many times. I've done it myself. And the person's, let's say it's a television show, they're really into it, right? They've been watching for 45 minutes, and now we're going to find out who did it. And you walk in and go, hey, blah, blah, blah. Like, what? And then it starts to escalate because now we're not being respectful of what the other person was doing. So the whole point is, how can you manage your life so that you're not reacting and that you're living in a more stress-free environment? Look at your own behavior and respect and acknowledge the other person and what it is that they're doing and what they're going through.
Oh, that's happened to me so many times. And I get calls, in the last 15 minutes of a I don't know, a whodunit drama, and I don't know who's done it, and I really keep, and the call rings at 9:45, in the last 15 minutes of the show, and I've missed it. I've just literally, and I just said, oh, well, but one of the things I do is I have a little mini iPad, and I sometimes, I don't always, but sometimes kind of catch up on there to see what it was. Sometimes it's a film and I've just missed it, and I don't kind of get wound up about it. Sometimes I think, oh, it would have been nice to have known what happened there. But generally the film comes back, or I can do it on catch up. It is about, I'm just literally documenting here how I would respond. I don't feel that everything has lost and sort of the world has come down because I didn't catch the end of the show. I just feel that oh well. And there are times that sort of I think if somebody's calling and I'm eating, I very rarely answer the phone if I'm having dinner because I just want to finish my food. There is that I used to just take calls, and I used to get very irritated and very frustrated because by the time the call was over, the food was cold, and that really is annoying. And so now, if the phone rings and it's an inquiry, I simply don't answer it, and I finish dinner, and then when I've had some water and I've kind of composed myself, I drop a quick message saying, sorry, I missed your call. I'm now free for the rest of the evening. Please call back. So that's a boundary that I've managed to address, that I take the space to eat. I take the space to cook and make sure that I'm actually eating in comfort rather than, sort of in between a call.
It is important to take that time for yourself. What I've started to do is, because I'm so scheduled out, I've got my handy pad here with every hour, and people, someone will reach out to me. Sometimes it's someone I don't know and they want to find out about coming on the show, or it's someone I do know and they want to have a call with me. And as soon as I see the word call, I start panicking because I think, wait a minute, I'm looking at the schedule. There's no room there for calls. There's no room. So now what I'll do is I will set an expectation, which is, I'd love to speak with you. I have a 15-minute window. And I forget what I was watching. I think I met someone from Clubhouse, and I watched something that they put together that they schedule in 15-minute increments. And I really thought to myself when I was watching the show that was kind of rude, because it makes it you kind of feel like, oh, I'm not worth more than 15 minutes. But it actually makes a lot of sense, because one phone call can derail you for the whole rest of the day. And also what I find is when the phone calls go on for a long time, it could be because someone is going through something and they want to share it with me. And we've talked about the boundaries and expectations. So now that's what I just say, listen, I'm really sorry, but this is what I have. I've got 15 minutes.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Because the other person does not know what your schedule is, doesn't know what your availability is. And when they get started, because they're the ones that ask for the call, they will just continue. And time goes quickly when you're having fun. When you're talking, you don't know how quickly the time's gone. All our shows always go quickly.
And fly by.
We don't know. And so when you do put that boundary in, then when the other person knows, well, you've got a 15-minute window, then they will be concise with what they want to say.
Exactly. The thing that's interesting is, and I love when people reach out, I always refer them to the website. First, they'll say, you can go to usaglobaltv.com and book your session. And then they'll come back and say, but no, they want to speak to me. And I think to myself, oh, does Oprah speak to everyone? And then I realize I'm not Oprah. So I have to speak with everyone, which I love. It's just, there's not enough time because there's so many details for this platform that it takes a lot of concentration to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. But so I think that makes sense. Setting expectations, setting boundaries, and then being realistic with what it is you can and cannot do. And then I think that also helps to create less stress. And I also think, I want your opinion on this. I feel like if I were to reach out to you and you said, I'd love to chat with you, I have 15 minutes, or you could schedule an appointment. That's always an option. You could schedule an appointment to hire me, or I can give you 15 minutes. I have a lot of respect for that, because that would mean to me that you really value your time and that your time is worth paying for because you are an expert.
It's making me think about how much time I give away.
That's why I said it to
you. Well, what I do, and some people just catch me and, I'm free. And other people, they actually say, is it okay if I call you tomorrow? And then I will respond back saying, I am free between these times and this time. It will be really helpful for me to know when you're going to call so that I can plan the rest of my day. So the other person knows where you are. I did have somebody that I was working with a long time ago that would say, don't call me during these times. And so what would happen is people would call them in those times. And he said, I don't know why this is. And I said, perhaps a strategy would be if you said, I am available to speak during these times.
Yes.
What time would work for you? And I'll schedule your call in my diary to make sure I'm free for your call to come through easily. And he was kind of blown away, because we generally think about what we don't have or we don't want. So if we're busy kind of say all evening, to say I'm not free tomorrow evening doesn't help the other person.
Right.
It's much better to say when is good for them to call you, and then, be generous with giving them different times. This is like sort of the unspoken communication. The other person doesn't know when to call. If you say, I'm not free tomorrow evening, then they're left with, well, when are you free?
Right. Positive. Give the availability right up front, because the mind is trained, I think, when we hear not, that we go to are. So,
yes, that's exactly right. That we naturally, when we say, if I said to somebody, I'm not free tomorrow evening, they will call, or I'm not free until after 6. I've calls at 6 o'clock.
yeah, exactly. Because they've been waiting and waiting. Something I want to explore with you, both as people who are formerly from corporate and now as entrepreneurs. When I was in corporate, like you, very well paid. And for the money I was paid, there were certain expectations. We're giving you this money, we're giving you these benefits, and we expect you to do this, that, and the other. We expect you to hit these goals. And then transition as an entrepreneur, and it's like, oh, here, everything's free. This is free, that's free, this is free, that's free. So now, no longer valuing our time, because when we're in corporate, they valued our time and we had to do certain things and they gave us a paycheck. And then we go out on our own and we feel insecure and we don't feel we have the credibility, I guess. And so we give everything away until we come to terms with the fact that all we have in life is time. Time ticks every second away, and we deserve to be compensated for our time when we're providing expertise.
It's a really, really interesting challenge, and I'm so with you. And at the same time, if you look at the corporates, they are giving a lot away. So all the corporate hospitality is their time, their money, the company's money, and that is a lot of money that they're putting towards corporate hospitality, to wining and dining their potential prospective clients. So it is on the other side of that, that they are giving time. I mean, I used to do networking when it was really good to do before the world changed. And I would, chat to people that I didn't know and introduce what I do, and they would do the same. And some evenings, it was kind of 4 or 5 hours, and sometimes lunches. So it'd be like an all day thing. And there wouldn't be one client that I would pick up at all. But it was, sort of the fun way of, seeing potential prospective clients. Whereas the corporates are doing that in a much more formal way. We're doing it in an informal way, So I do feel that they are giving. It's just that perhaps we don't see it. We're not seeing it in quite the same way, because they're giving the people that work for them all their breaks. That's free, and they're paying for you to travel and, sort of in style, and to go to good places. So all that is paid, and that's because they are looking after you. And so that it's like sort of a quid pro quo. They're investing in you for you to do good for them. Does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely makes sense. I think you and I are saying the same thing, unless I'm misunderstanding. But what I'm saying is that when we leave that environment where we are taken care of and taken care of very well for doing what it is we're supposed to be doing, and then we go out on our own where there is no one paying for entertainment and there is no one covering for mileage, everything is out of our own pockets, that then we don't value ourselves enough to ask someone to pay for whatever service we're providing. So what do I mean by this? So after I left my corporate career, during the pandemic in 2020, I started doing life coaching for free. I started teaching yoga for free. I started doing meditation for free. Everything was for free because I didn't really value myself as an expert. Even though I had paid to become certified in all of those areas, I had put the time in that I didn't see my own worth. That's what I was saying.
Right. That's a slightly different question, because there is an investment for the employer to pay for you to have all those luxuries. And so there is an investment for us to pay to have all those luxuries. There's no such thing as a free lunch, is what they say, or a free dinner. And so everything is paid for, and it depends on how we personally feel about our value. So I always like to give because I can, and there's so much more. So I like to give freely and unconditionally, only to a certain point. And I always make sure that the person knows that there is so much more, because there is. And I feel that that's probably the way to approach it, that it's important to know what your value is and what that value is to the other person, and having your service, how it will change their lives. And some people, they're not ready. And so it doesn't matter how much free you give them, they will still not become a paid client because they're not ready. And they'd much rather go on holiday than sort out their health or their stress levels, or something that sort of doing something like yoga, because it's not where their hierarchy of values are. And people will spend to their hierarchy of their values. And so if somebody values holidays over their health, they will always have money to do their 3 or 4 holidays a year, but they don't have money for their health. And so it's important to check in with the other person, because there are some people that will just continually take free because that's the hierarchy, that's the height of their value. There are others that there will be a value exchange, a quid pro quo, where it literally is an exchange, that they're giving something to you, you're giving something to them, and there's some equal value being exchanged. Some people really, take. There are takers and there are givers. And it all comes down to your boundaries. What works for you in terms of your boundaries, what feels good, because it's altruistic to give. And we always feel good when we give. I certainly do. And I can have a very thriving business giving and not getting paid. We can all do that and not do very well. And it's about balance, and it's about what feels right at the time. I've certainly seen lots of people that haven't got the money, and I've helped them because genuinely they needed help, and I could. And I would never have anybody stranded in terms of a high level of anxiety if they called me in the middle of the night and not help them when I knew that I could. Whether they could pay me or not, I would not do that. That's not in my nature. And that's why, boundaries get crossed a lot of times, and I get frustrated about that. And it is about managing your personal boundaries as to what you give away and what you ask to be paid for.
I agree with what you're saying. And there is no free lunch, there is no free dinner. And I think there's a difference between volunteering, philanthropy, and giving from your heart to help other people. And I know you and I are both about that. And then there's also something to be said when you have expertise that is sought after and you need to keep the lights on, that it's good to value yourself and say, no, I gave that for free, I did that for free, but this is not free. And
Yeah.
I think that people respect that. And I notice now when I'm interviewing people, if everything they're doing is for free, they'll say, oh, this is free, that's free, this is free. I think they're not going to be around too long doing what they're doing, because it's not a workable model. Because what ends up happening is everything that's free, there is a connotation that free can also mean no value. And I'll share something. So I took this course and I paid $500 for the course, and it was 5 weeks. And each week there was a different expert who was presenting something for business owners. And the first person who was presenting, a woman, I went to her website while she was speaking, and I saw she charged $6,200 for 3 hours of coaching. And so I stopped looking at her website and I paid attention to what she said, because any gem she gave had to be worth something. Because if someone's paying her that kind of money, she's got to have all the answers. And then I found week after week that each of these 5 people who didn't know each other, they were brought on by the person running the program, they were all charging thousands of dollars for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I learned something from that. And at that moment, I said to myself, free is when I want to help someone. I want to bring someone up, inspire someone. I want them to know that I'm there. But I also have worth, that I deserve to get paid for my expertise. So I do a lot of volunteering and charitable work for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. And of course, on this platform, people can come and share their story. And I love that. But there's also, the bills have to be paid. Do you see what I'm saying? And I love what you shared about the value exchange, because that is pivotal too. It doesn't always mean that it's money. It's, hey, I'll do this for you and you do this for me. And then we both feel acknowledged and we both feel good about ourselves. Because I also think, and this just could be my opinion, but when you're taking and taking and taking and not giving back, then it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. And it will annoy the other person who's giving as well. I've had a number of times where people have called for a free consultation kind of every week. And I've said, there's a point that, you know, when they said, oh, I'm going to make a booking with you, and they've called when they're really very anxious and can't sleep, and they say, oh, you know, please, can you help me just this one more time? And so they'll pay some money in my bank account, and then they don't. And so it is about, you know, sort of some people will take, you know, there are takers and there are givers, and you know, that's the nature of our world. But we are moving, I feel, into a more collaborative world, a world where we're, you know, sort of rather than giving and taking, we're in collaborations that work, because no one person is an island. You know, we need each other to make it all work. And so I feel that the vibrations, the frequencies of the planet now are moving much more into the feminine energy and much more into a place of collaboration and working together rather than being in isolation. And that's certainly is something that I'm experiencing. I had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn and just introduce himself, saying, I'm an expert in this, and this, and I've seen your profile and I would love to collaborate with you. And I'm just kind of going, oh, okay. That's and I didn't do anything. I just had that, you know, that message, and it's a private message. And so people are looking for collaborations because they work. You know, different skill bases together works, and we're not the sum of our parts. We're not the. I can't remember how that goes now.
I know what you mean.
I've lost the words now. It's no man is an island, so we're not individual, you know. And when there is more parts, we can do more things together. I'll have to look that up.
I know what you're saying. And I totally believe in collaborations. In fact, I love connecting people on our platform, and I'll say, hey, you two are all here. The 3 of us are here today. You two reach out to each other. We just had that yesterday, because what you don't know, meaning everyone has their own skill set and talents. And by collaborating, you come up with amazing ideas that you couldn't have thought of, and you get to meet someone new. And it's all about personal and professional development and growth. So, and Caroline, we have grown so much that we are at 45 minutes. We have to, once again, with another show starting in less than 4 minutes. So I'm going to spotlight you. And if you can just share with our audience who you would like to reach out to you and how they should do it.
As there is another show coming up imminently, I'm Caroline HEWARD, the Harley Street Stress Expert. If you have any type of stress, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, behavioral, whether you have relationship problems, whether you have recent bereavements, friendship issues, partnership issues, whatever you're complaining about essentially is creating your stress, what's keeping you awake at night, reach out to me on No More Stress, literally, No More Stress at live.co.uk. That's my email. And I will schedule with you at an agreed time for you and for me a 30-minute free Zoom consultation, as we've been talking about, free, to help you. It will give you an incredible night's sleep and move you into a state of inner deep relaxation. That's Caroline HEWARD, the Harley Street Stress Expert, and I've been loving seeing you today.
Thank you so much. And folks, I hope you heard what she said. She said a 30-minute free Zoom. She didn't say multiple. She didn't say keep coming back, right? That we're just putting a line in the sand. And I want folks to know also that you have graciously been leading guided meditations for our elevated listening community. I'm going to put up the graphic. We'd love to have you join us. The elevated listening community, you can just go to drjacalyn.com/join. So every Sunday, you'll get a link to a new video. And our video last week was Caroline's guided meditation, which was amazing. And then we had excerpts from one of our shows, which was The Art of Creating Mental Health Wealth. And Janetta Barry, who's on our team here, she spoke all about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and why you should get to know more about this, and how if you are a creative person, if you're an artist, a performer, if you're a broadcaster, you can actually take your content and turn it into an NFT and get paid for it, as long as you have a following. There's a lot of details. I'm not a financial advisor, just saying that's what our show is about. So do reach out. Again, I'm putting it up. It's drjacalyn.com/join. All right. That being said, we are going to leave for now. And our next show is coming up. It's called Loving Longevity, followed by the Pet Psychic Amina. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Bye-bye. Thank you. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.